Everybody, more great to see you at home and those here. It's great, I think, to be able to share a message at the beginning of a year. And if I'm honest, it's a message that's been on my heart for quite a while, but quite a challenging message. And so I just want to share with you why I want to share this message, if you like, the heart behind it. I love this church. I've been here for 14 odd years, and it's a brilliant church. It's a great church family. Really loving, really caring. If I'm honest, I think I've been blessed the most more in this church than any church before. It's a really good church, and I really enjoy coming here and fellowshipping with you and being with this family. But having said all that, I know, like me, this church isn't perfect. We are. Yeah, sorry, if someone said what? I know we are, as the saying goes, we're on a journey, becoming more Christ-like. We're on a journey becoming more like God, to becoming more the church that He's called us to be, that He's destined us to be. And so I want to share this message this morning. For those of you who know me, probably know that unity is something I'm really passionate about. Unity in the church is something that I'm really passionate about. Something I pray about on a regular basis is that this church would be a united church. And it's something that God is very passionate about as well. As you read the Bible, as you go through the Bible, right the way through the Bible, it's something that's mentioned a lot. In the New Testament, we're told to strive for unity because it's not easy. We're told to love each one another, to bear with one another. Loads of different encouragements in the New Testament. And as we were reminded this morning, and Linda reminded us this morning, in the Psalms, Jesus says this, where there is unity, God commands His blessing. There is great reward in unity. And it's something God is really passionate about, and something God really wants for His church, because He knows a united church is a powerful church. He knows a united church is going somewhere. A church that is all fragmented and everything isn't going anywhere. It's just going around in circles. And as I was thinking about unity, I was going back in the summer sometime, and I believe God showed me that there's two types of unity. There's a passive unity and an aggressive unity. A passive unity where we care for one another, where we pray for one another, where we help one another, where we love one another. Where we're together, helping, as a family, when someone's ill, gets round each other. A passive unity where we get round each other and help one another. But there is also an aggressive unity. Aggressive unity where we go out to reach the lost, where we go out into the community, where we reach out, where we fulfill the commission that God has given us to go into all the world and preach the gospel. An aggressive unity where we want to change the atmosphere that's in our community, where we want those people who are lost and going to a lost eternity, we want to seek them out and we want to bring them to God. There are these two types of unity, over the last nearly a couple of years now, with this pandemic. We've seen the NHS, who have worked so well together. They've been united together in caring for those who have been ill, those who have been ill or even dying, where they've been, in that caring for those people. But also we've seen our soldiers, American soldiers coming out of Afghanistan, where for quite a while they were united in a battle, fighting for justice, fighting for human rights. Some of them even losing their lives, but they were united in that battle. And those are the two types of unity that God sort of showed me we can have. Sorry, I've lost my glasses. And we need both types in the church. They're not exclusive. You can't have one or the other. We do need both those types of unity in the church. We need to be caring for one another. We are Christ's body. So we need to look after Christ's body. We need to look after one another. We need to pray for each other. We need to help one another. We need to be united in that as we do that. But also, We have a commission by Jesus Christ to go into all the world and preach that gospel. We need that aggressive unity where we're not just inward looking at each other and helping one another, but we are outward looking out into the community, looking out into those people who are going to a lost eternity. We need both those types of unity. We need those types of unity in the church. One isn't, we can't have, it's not an either or. We need both of them working together, in unity together, providing a united front. And as I was thinking, as I was sort of praying, thinking, and, just generally meditating on this, in my readings, I was reading in Colossians, still reading in Colossians actually, but there's some verses in Colossians Chapter 2, verses 2 to 5. I was reading in the Amplified version. I think Keith's got it up there somewhere. Colossians Chapter 2, verses 2 to 5. And this is what it says. For my hope is that their hearts may be encouraged as they are knit together in unselfish love. The theme of unity straight away. So they may have all the riches that come from full assurance of understanding the joy of salvation, resulting in true and more intimate knowledge of the mystery of God, that is Christ, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge regarding the word and purposes of God. I say this so that no one will deceive you with persuasive but thoroughly deceptive arguments. For even though I am absent from you in body, nevertheless I am with you in spirit, delighted in your good discipline, as you stand shoulder to shoulder and form a solid front, and see the stability of your faith in Christ, your steadfast reliance on him, and your unwavering confidence in his power, wisdom, and goodness. And the line that got me in there was, it says it's delighted to see your good discipline as you stand shoulder to shoulder and form a solid front. Paul was delighted in this church as they stood shoulder to shoulder forming this solid front. And as I was reading this, my mind sort of slipped, I don't know why I was right or wrong, but slipped to the front line of warfare. To the front line, you can see the front line of soldiers, shoulder to shoulder against the enemy. And I had this picture, and as I read different versions, it talks about having a good order in your discipline. And I was thinking, well, how do the different versions sort of tie up and marry up? I'm not a Greek scholar, by the way, but as I read, someone said that in the original Greek, these are military terms. That Paul was using military terms here of standing shoulder to shoulder, of being military minded in good order, standing united. These people, face to face, united, shoulder to shoulder against the enemy. Many people have seen the pictures in the First World War where, you had the front line, you had a little bit of no man's land, and then you had the enemy. And they formed this solid line. We are called as a church to fight a battle, to be in a war. All the way through the Bible, or in the New Testament, and everything, it talks about us being in a battle, of waging war. Church, we are in a battle. When we become a Christian, I was told, we enlist in God's army, whether we realize it or not. But as we, that is the truth. Well, and as a church, we are in a battle. We may not appreciate that, we may not like that, but we are. We are in a war together. And it is the most serious battle. It's the most, the stakes are very high. The stakes are people's eternity. That is what we are fighting for. That is what this aggressive unity is about. It's about fighting this war, about fighting this battle, about coming against the enemy, about claiming back God's kingdom, about claiming back people's lives. Because without the message of the gospel, without that, where are people going? No matter whether they're rich, they're poor, whatever they are, people are destined for an eternity without Christ in hell. And that is the battle that we are in. You know, in the New Testament, we are referred to as soldiers of Christ, told to fight the fight of faith, not to wrestle against flesh and blood. We are more than conquerors. And there are various verses which show us that we are in this war, that we are waging a battle. I know it doesn't feel, may not feel the same as, a war, natural war in the world at the moment. But we are still in this battle. When Paul was writing these things, he was very aware of the Romans. And they were an army to be reckoned with. In their day, they were the most powerful army around, and no one could stand against them. And, Paul took a lot from them. And, Paul doesn't mention this in the Bible, but one of the things they used to do, they used to form a thing, if you've got a picture there, Keith, called a testudo or a tortoise. Testudo is Roman for a tortoise. And in it, what they would do, they would form this solid circle. The outside of the circle would lock their shields together so that no one could get in from the edges. And the inner part of the circle, they would lock their shields above their heads. And a test for this formation would be to put a chariot over the top to see that it didn't crumble. I was told that you could actually drive a tank over that. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But in this united formation, they were unstoppable. No one could come in. They would march forward, and they would win. Their victory was secured because of the unity they had, because of what they were in. And as a church, we need to lock our shields together. We need to lock ourselves together in unity in this war that we are waging, in this war that we are in. So that we are in unity together. Now in that verse in Colossians, it talks about, having this proper order of things, proper order of unity, standing together. So what does it mean? What does this order mean? It can mean a lot of things. I've got to be honest, it can be lots of things. But I feel there's just two things I need to bring to you this morning. So you can think, only two things this morning, that's good. It's not going to be too long. So it's just two things to bring this morning. The first one is this, that we need to know who our enemy is. In this battle, we need to know who our enemy is. And secondly, what we are fighting for, or who we are fighting for. So what is the enemy, or who is the enemy, and what are we fighting for? In Ephesians 6, verse 12, it lays out quite plainly who our enemy is. And it says this in Ephesians 6, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood." It's not against flesh and blood. It's not against people, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces in the heavenly realms. Our enemy is not flesh and blood. Our enemy is not each other. Now, we may wind each other up. We may infuriate each other. Beyond belief sometimes. We may hurt each other. We may say things that deeply hurt. And that's just me on a good day. But, we may do all these things. But we need to get the bigger picture and forgive one another when these things happen. Because the bigger picture is this, that Satan is trying, and his hordes are trying to come in and disturb our unity. He is trying to get in and put a wedge between us because he knows a divided church isn't going anywhere. He's trying, with everything he's got, all the lies and the deceits he wants to throw at us, He's trying to deceive us. He's trying to split us apart. Don't let him. Forgive that person. Bear with that person. Encourage one another. Kick Satan where it hurts, and let's get on with the job that we are called to do. We need to keep in mind this bigger picture. The spiritual, the forces of evil, what Paul was talking about in Ephesians, they'll stop at nothing to divide us, to come in. They will use the slip of a tongue. They will use something that's said in error. They will use, sometimes, we do say malicious things. Let's be honest. But Satan, they use those things. And they put these voices in your head. So that's what the church is really like, is it? That's what they really think of you. They just think you're here for this or that or the other. Satan puts these voices in our heads to cause these hurts and these offenses to grow. We need to keep this bigger picture that it's not about what people have said. It's not about flesh and blood. It's about the spiritual forces. It's about Satan and what he's trying to do. Because he knows if he splits us up, we cannot go and complete the mission that God has given us. We need to keep that bigger picture in mind. We are not the enemy. We are brothers and sisters united in this church. We are family together, united. And we should love each other. You've got to bear with me. Because I know I make mistakes and I infuriate people. You've got to bear with me and I've got to bear with you as we go together with a heart for this community. Because without us, they're lost. That's the truth of it. Without us united together, they are lost. That is the bigger picture. And they are not the enemy either. Those people that we want to reach, they are not the enemy. And I know we've all fallen foul of things perhaps on social media, on things perhaps people have said about us, on horrible things that have been done to the church, said to the church. But they are still not the enemy. There is only one enemy, and that is Satan. And we must not let the hurt that we suffer from those outside stop us fighting for their salvation. We need to keep this bigger picture, what it's all about, what this battle we are in. The devices that Satan uses. Satan and his hordes, they are our enemy. They are our only enemy. There is no one else. But Satan and his army, Satan and his lies and deceit, these are the things that are stopping people giving their lives to Christ. Satan and his lies and deceit. These are what is stopping people having Christ's promised life and living it to the full. Satan and his lies and deceit. These are what is sending people to hell instead of heaven. Satan lies and deceit is what is trapping so many people into a life without hope, without fulfillment, and without God. Satan is our enemy, and we need to know how to fight our enemy. The weapon of prayer. How do we overcome the battles in the heavenly realms? Through prayer, through united prayer, through a church that gets together on its knees and it prays. It prays without division. It prays in unity for this area, for the mission that God has given us. Church united in prayer. That is an unsurmountable problem to Satan. He cannot stand against that. Because God is on our side. And as we've said earlier on, God has promised his blessing on that church that unites in prayer. The blessing on the community as well, I'm sure. We need to stand together, united in prayer, united in this battle. So who is our enemy? It is Satan. It is not ourselves. It is not each other. It is not the ones we're trying to reach. Our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual principalities in the heavenlies. That's where our enemy is. So what is this battle about? What is this battle for? This battle is about God's glory. This battle is about God being glorified through the growth of this church. This battle is about God being glorified through the transformation of the community. This battle is about God being glorified through the new atmosphere in this community. You know, there's a song that says, God changed the atmosphere. And that's what we want to do. That's what we're being called to do. And God is glorified as that is changed. As family lives are changed, God is glorified. The battle is about God's glory, first and foremost. And I'm sure we're all familiar with the story of David and Goliath and the Israelites and the Philistines. I'm sure we're all familiar with that. But what was the difference between David and the other Israelites? If you remember, when David came on the scene, all the other Israelites were cowering behind the rocks and the bushes, frightened of Goliath. But David had something different about him, that he was able to stand up to this uncircumcised heathen, Philistine, and knock him flat. David, the difference is, David realized what the battle was about. Well, both the Israelites and David knew that, the battle was about the freedom from the Philistines. Knew that the battle was about the freedom that they would have. You know, if they were defeated by the Philistines, they'd be in slavery. They both knew that. But David realized there was something even greater than that at stake, and that was God's glory. David realized it was God's glory at stake in this battle, and he was not going to stand for it. And so he went for Goliath and defeated him. And in everything we do as a church, God's glory is the most important thing. God's glory is the most important thing. You know, the chief end of man is to glorify God. That's what it says in the Church of England, and that's correct, absolutely correct. The chief end of man is to glorify God. That's what we are here for. And so everything we do should be glorifying to God. And you know, if we just keep that as our benchmark in our lives, that does make things quite a lot easier, because we can say, well, is what am I doing glorifying to God? Yes or no? No, I'm not going to do it. You know, what we do should be glorifying to God. In everything we do, we should be glorifying to God. That is what the battle is about, chiefly. The top of the list is glorifying to God. But yes, also, Jesus gave us the Great Commission to go into all the world and to preach the gospel. You know, the vision for our church, the ultimate vision, is for the salvation of Thornmoor and Bulwark. That's where we start with our vision. You know, that's where we're at. That's where we want to reach. You know, the schools that we reach into. The things that we do with Food Bank. You know, why? Because we want to reach this community for Christ. This is what the battle is about as well. You know, because without us, they are going to hell. That's the truth. And we don't like saying things like that. But that is where it is at. And we are called to this battle. We are called to this war for their salvation. But they need a church that is united. They need to look at our church and see a church that is united, in love with one another, bearing with one another, helping one another, united in vision, together. You know, in this pandemic, there's two things that's been filling the news. Unless I'm a bit naive and have missed something, but there's two main things that have been filling the news. One is the pandemic itself. You know, how many people it's affecting, how it's spreading, and the actual, you know, the health side of the pandemic. But the other is the squabbling in Parliament and the politicians. That fills the rest of the news, am I right? We cannot be a people like that. We cannot replicate those people. We need to be a different people that are united together in this aggressive unity together, in this battle for their souls, in this battle for their lives. We cannot and we will not be a people that fight one another over different stupid little things. We need to be united, going forward, claiming ground for God's glory, for his kingdom. You know, this world is looking for people who will love one another, who will be united with one another, who won't squabble over stupid things with one another, who will just put everything else, needless things, to the back, and just join together, united in the vision and the mission that God has called us to be in. If we're not united in that, if we're not united together in transforming this community for God, we are not going to transform this community. If we're not united together in loving one another, we're not going to have any effect. We need to be a church that is united, because, as I said, a church that is divided doesn't go anywhere. It just goes round in circles. We have a community that needs God. We have a community that desperately needs God. They don't know it. We know it. They don't know it. And God has chosen us for that task. God has chosen us to be that good news to them. God has chosen us to be that bringer of great news, of God's good news. That's what God has called us to be. To be a church that is united, both passively loving one another, but also aggressively fighting this battle for their lives. It is only by this unity this battle will be won. Let us lock shields together, you know, like that picture of the Romans there. You know, let's lock shields together, putting anything else, you know, to one side. Let us lock shields together. Let's love one another. Let's let love and the love for God unite us and bind us together. Let us be a church that, despite the pandemic, despite our finances, despite our problems, despite our differences, and anything else that can come in its way, we move together united in God and the vision that he has given us. Let's move forward this year in unity together. I'm just finished with this verse. Philippians 3, verse 13. But one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and reaching forward to what is ahead. My old life behind, putting everything on the line for this mission. Forgetting everything else, putting everything else on the line for the mission. Let us lock shields together. Let's be united in love and vision together, in a unity against the enemy, on a mission for God and God's glory and God's kingdom. Amen.